Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Let's drift into a soothing story together as you begin your journey into a restful and rejuvenating sleep. In the heart of a vast, wintry landscape, the kingdom was covered in thick snow, each flake falling in perfect stillness like the whispers of an ancient secret. The cold air bit at the skin, but it carried with it a strange sense of clarity, a purity that seemed to belong only to this frozen world. A grand palace stood amidst the snowy landscape, its towering spires dusted with ice, the intricate windows framed with patterns of frost. This was no ordinary kingdom, for in the center of its heart, within the cold stone walls of its palace, resided a powerful yet distant force. The white snow queen dotted the center of the palace was a magical mirror held within the grand hall, gleaming with an eerie, almost hypnotic light. It was an object of great power, one that reflected not just the outer world, but the innermost truths of the heart. The mirror, though beautiful, had the power to reveal only what was dark and distorted. Those who gazed into it saw a reflection of their deepest fears, their most selfish desires, their harshest judgments. It was the White Snow Queen's greatest creation, a mirror that had the power to reveal the ugliness within, to freeze the heart and soul of those who were unwilling to face their own darkness. One winter's day, as the wind howled outside the palace, the queen stood before the mirror, her sharp, crystalline gaze fixed on the reflection that shimmered before her. The mirror, as always, showed her the beauty of the world in a cold, detached way. Her features pale as snow, her hair shimmering like silver ice, were reflected back in perfect symmetry. The queen was pleased by her appearance. She was indeed beautiful, cold, unfeeling, and perfect, with no trace of warmth or love. But the mirror's power did not only satisfy her vanity, it fed her obsession with beauty, with perfection, for she knew deep down that beauty alone would grant her control over the world, over the hearts of the people. She reveled in her beauty, yet it was never enough. The mirror had told her time and again that she was the fairest of them all, but that truth, like all others, had become hollow and cold over time. There was a longing deep within her to see someone whose beauty could rival her own, someone who could challenge her sense of superiority. It was on a quiet afternoon, as the frost began to settle deeper over the land, that the queen gazed into the mirror once more. This time, however, something was different. The mirror shimmered with a strange, otherworldly glow, its surface rippling as though something were shifting within. The queen's heart quickened with an unfamiliar thrill, but it was not excitement. It was something far colder. The mirror revealed the face of a young girl with eyes as bright as the spring sky and hair as golden as sunlight. She stood in the middle of a garden, surrounded by flowers, her laughter bright as the sun. "Who is she?" the queen whispered, her voice rising in a mix of curiosity and jealousy. The mirror, usually so clear and sure, now seemed to hesitate, the image flickering before it steadied. "She is the fairest," the mirror answered, its voice cold as ice. The queen's heart twisted, an unfamiliar sensation stirring within her. How could this girl be more beautiful than her? How could anyone challenge the perfection of her own reflection? Her beauty was flawless. It was her power, her weapon, her identity. To see someone else as beautiful, no, more beautiful was. A threat she could not ignore. The queen's cold eyes narrowed, her mind already working, turning with an icy resolve. She would not allow such beauty to go unchallenged. This girl must be eliminated, her light extinguished before it could ever threaten the queen's reign. The white snow queen turned from the mirror, her gaze now fixed firmly on the horizon beyond the palace walls. The winds of winter howled louder, echoing through the hall, and her cold heart hardened further. There was only one course of action now. The girl must be found, and she must be silenced. The wind outside howled with fury, as though echoing the turmoil that stirred within the queen's cold heart. The once serene palace, with its walls of ice and glass, seemed to shudder with the weight of her thoughts. The sight of the young girl, so pure, so radiant, had ignited something within the queen. A deep sense of possessiveness, an unyielding desire to maintain her beauty as the ultimate standard of the world. She could not allow this newcomer to overshadow her, and so her heart grew colder, its icy grip tightening with each passing moment. With a sweeping motion, the queen summoned her trusted mirror to her side. Its surface, smooth and flawless, reflected the palace in pristine clarity. But the queen's eyes were not on the mirror now. She was already thinking ahead, calculating how best to rid the world of this unexpected threat. She needed to act swiftly, decisively, before the young girl's beauty could spread further. In the silence of her throne room, the queen began to weave her plan. She would not approach the girl directly. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, she would send someone to capture her, someone whose heart was already aligned with the queen's unfeeling nature, someone who would carry out her will without hesitation. The queen's mind settled on one individual, a man she had long kept in her service, a cold-hearted creature who had long been under her control. His obedience was unwavering, his loyalty to her unquestionable. Asterisk with a snap of her fingers, a dark figure emerged from the shadows of the palace. His eyes glimmered with an icy, soulless gleam, and his movements were swift and precise, like the silent approach of winter itself. The queen gazed at him with a calculating expression, her lips curling into a cold, sinister smile. "Bring her to me," the queen commanded. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of authority and menace. "The girl with the golden hair. She is to be brought to the palace, where she will no longer be a threat to me." Her eyes glinted with a cold, calculating fire, her words a silent decree that makes sure she does not know what is happening. Let her come willingly, with her heart full of innocence, for that is the only way I will keep her. The man, without a word, nodded and vanished as swiftly as he had appeared. The queen stood alone once more, her eyes gazing into the distance, her thoughts turning inward. She knew what she had ordered, what she would do, and in her heart there was no regret. She was the queen. Her beauty was everything, and she would stop at nothing to preserve it. As the wind howled louder, swirling around the palace in gusts of icy fury, the queen stood motionless, her face unreadable. She had made her choice. The girl would never know what was coming for her, and when the queen was finished, her reign would remain unchallenged, untouched by the light of anyone else's. Beauty, the world, once again, would belong to her alone dot. As the queen's servant disappeared into the shadows, the stillness of the palace returned. The queen, standing alone in the grand, icy hall, allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Her mind, however, remained sharp, ever focused on the plan she had set in motion. Her breath, though slow, felt a chill deeper than the winter's grasp, for she knew that soon the girl would be within her reach. Soon the world would return to its rightful place, and her reign would remain uncontested. Meanwhile, far beyond the palace walls, the young girl, whose golden hair and bright eyes had stirred such envy in the queen, continued with her simple, peaceful life. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She was only a child full of innocence and wonder, and that was the very reason the queen's heart had been pierced with jealousy. This girl, so pure and untainted, represented the very essence of everything the queen lacked: the warmth of love, the brightness of kindness, the warmth that thawed even the coldest hearts. Asterisk, the girl, whom we now know as Gerda, was out playing in the snowy streets with her friends. She had never known the cold grip of envy, for her heart was warm and open to all those around her. As she laughed and twirled in the snow, the cold wind seemed to dance with her, spinning the flakes around her like tiny diamonds. The world felt so light, so full of potential, and every step she took felt like a joy she could never tire of. But as the wind grew colder, Gerda's smile began to fade, and the feeling of something unfamiliar, something ominous, began to settle over her. A chill ran down her spine, and she paused for a moment, looking around. The streets were silent, empty, as if the world itself had fallen into a deep sleep. She shook off the uneasy feeling, thinking it was nothing more than the wind. But even as she continued her play, her heart grew heavy, as though something in the air had shifted. Before she could think any further, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man, cloaked in a dark, flowing robe, approached her. His eyes gleamed in the dim light, a strange, icy gleam that did not belong to the world Gerda knew. His face was expressionless, his movements calculated and smooth. "Little girl," the man said, his voice low but oddly melodic, "I have a message for you." Gerda's heart raced, but she did not run. She had been taught to be kind to strangers, to trust in the goodness of others. Yet something about this man unsettled her, even as he seemed so calm, so composed. There was an unnatural stillness to him, as though he were not entirely part of this world. "I am a messenger from the Snow Queen," the man continued. "She has been watching you, dear child, and she wants you to come with me." Gerda's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. The name of the Snow Queen, spoken in such a cold, eerie voice, sent a ripple of fear through her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, her instincts telling her to run, but her legs refusing to move. "I don't want to go." The man's gaze softened slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "She only wishes to meet you, child. There's no danger in it, I assure you. Come with me, and all will be well. Gerda took a step back, her heart pounding. She had heard stories, whispers of a queen who ruled over the snow and ice, whose heart was colder than the deepest winter. But never had she imagined that this story would become her own. I won't go, Gerda said, her voice trembling, though a spark of defiance burned in her chest. I don't want to meet her. I want to stay here with my friends. The man's face hardened, and with one swift movement, he extended his hand toward her. You have no choice, little one, he said coldly. The queen demands it. As his hand reached for her, Gerda's heart raced with fear. But something within her, something stronger than fear, stirred. She could not go, not like this, not without understanding. She turned and ran, heart pounding as her feet slipped through the snow. But the man was fast, much faster than she had anticipated. With a swift motion, he caught her by the arm and pulled her close. His icy touch sent a shiver through her, and for a moment, the world around her seemed to freeze in place. The coldness of his touch spread through her, chilling her to the core. You must come with me, he repeated, his voice steady but tinged with an unyielding force. It is not a choice. But just as the fear began to overtake her, Gerda found her voice again. No, let me go. She struggled, her hands pushing against his cold fingers, her breath coming in sharp, quick gasps. A sudden, unexpected warmth spread from her chest, her heart beating fiercely against the chill. It was the warmth of the love she felt for her. Family, for the world she knew, for the sunlight that bathed the world in its golden light. The force of her emotions, the warmth of her heart, surged up within her like a flood. With all the strength she could muster, she broke free from his grasped. The man stepped back, his eyes narrowing as if he hadn't anticipated her resistance. You may run now, he said coldly, but the Snow Queen will have you in the end. It is inevitable. With that, he turned, fading back into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Gerda stood there, her heart still racing, her mind spinning with confusion and fear. She knew the man's words held weight. The Snow Queen would not be so easily denied. And if she was to protect her happiness, her family, she would have to find a way to face this chilling, mysterious queen and break free from the icy grasp that threatened to take everything from her. The cold wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a deep, unsettling chill. The landscape seemed to stretch endlessly before Gerda, the snow-covered ground shimmering under the pale light of the moon. Despite the weight of the fear that had settled in her heart, Gerda knew she could not simply stand still. She had felt the icy grip of the Snow Queen's servant, and his words echoed in her mind. The Snow Queen will have you in the end. That thought gnawed at her, but it wasn't the only thing that burned within her. The warmth in her heart, the love she held for her family, her friends, and the life she had left behind, surged like a quiet flame. She couldn't let it be extinguished. Not by the cold, not by the queen. She refused to give in with determination. Gerda turned away from the place where the servant had appeared and started walking. Every step was heavy, and the cold air seemed to press in around her, but the warmth, of her resolve kept her moving forward. The wind whispered through the snow, as if urging her on. It was almost as if the forest itself was alive, and it could feel the strength of her spirit. She walked deeper into the winter night, the trees standing tall like silent sentinels, watching her progress. Each snowflake that fell from the sky felt like a quiet, cold kiss upon her face, but it wasn't enough to dampen her spirit. She had to find a way to protect herself, to escape the Snow Queen's influence, and most of all, to find a way back to her home. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving her family behind, of being lost to the icy world of the Snow Queen Dot. As Gerda walked through the snow-covered path, she felt an overwhelming sense of isolation, a quiet loneliness that only the vast winter landscape could bring. The familiar sounds of the village had long since faded, replaced by the muffled silence of the wilderness. She was alone, truly alone, except for the faint whispers of the wind, which seemed to guide her on her journey. Gerda was no stranger to hardship. She had grown up strong and full of hope, and despite the challenges she had faced in her life, she had never given up. This was no different. She would face whatever lay ahead with the same determination she had carried with her through every trial. The Snow Queen might have powers, but Gerda had something far greater, the unyielding warmth of her heart Dot as the hours passed. The night grew colder, but Gerda's steps never faltered. She walked through the frostbitten landscape with only the stars to light her way, her mind focused on the one goal that consumed her, to rescue her friend, to bring Kay back, to free him from the Queen's icy grip. She knew she was walking into danger. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with unknown perils. But she could not afford to be afraid, not now. Every part of her being was filled with love for Kay, and that love was the light that would guide her through the darkest places. Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faint sound of something else, a soft, distant voice. Gerda stopped, her heart racing, straining her ears to catch the sound. Was it a trick of the wind, or was it something more? Asterisk, the voice was faint but persistent, a low hum that seemed to echo through the snow-covered trees. She hesitated for a moment, uncertain of what it was, but then a feeling, a sense of something guiding her, stirred in her chest. She couldn't ignore it. She couldn't stop now. She had to follow wherever it led Dot, and so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Gerda followed the voice, her steps steady but quick. Her heart now filled not only with love for Kay, but also with the growing sense that she was being drawn toward something important. The voice was faint, but it was there. She didn't know who or what it belonged to, but it felt like a sign, a call to her, urging her to keep moving forward. The path became more difficult as she ventured farther from the familiar roads she knew. The snow became deeper, and the trees seemed to close in on her, their branches hanging low with the weight of ice and snow. But Gerda did not stop. Her determination drove her onward, step by careful step. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but she barely noticed. All that mattered now was the journey to save Kay, to free him from the Snow Queen's grasp. As the trees thinned and the path ahead opened into a wide, Empty space. Gerda looked up to see something she had not expected. A small, flickering light in the distance. Her heart leaped. She wasn't alone. Someone or something was out there, offering her a glimmer of hope in the vast frozen wilderness. Gerda quickened her pace, her footsteps crunching on the frozen ground. She could feel the warmth of the light pulling her toward it, guiding her with an unseen hand. She was closer now, so close, and she felt as though every step she took was bringing her closer to the answer, closer to the moment that would change everything. As Gerda pressed on through the snow, the light in the distance grew brighter, its soft glow piercing through the cold, dark air. The mysterious voice continued to hum faintly, like a lullaby carried by the wind. It was both soothing and beckoning, urging her forward. She didn't question it. She knew instinctively that it was leading her toward something important, something that could help her save Kay, that could lead her to break the ice that had trapped him in the Snow Queen's world. The path had become more treacherous as she ventured deeper into the wilderness, the snow growing deeper and the wind stronger. Yet, with each step, the warmth of the light felt closer, closer than she had ever imagined. Her heart quickened with anticipation and hope, the fatigue from her long journey beginning to melt away as the glow ahead became more vivid, more inviting. As she neared the source of the light, the trees parted, revealing a small clearing. The ground was thick with snow, but there, at the center of the clearing, was an ancient, weathered cabin. Its roof was heavy with snow, its windows glimmering with soft golden light. The door to the cabin was slightly ajar, and from within, the humming voice grew clearer. It was the same soft melody, full of warmth and comfort, like the embrace of a mother's lullaby. Gerda stepped forward, the crunch of her boots in the snow the only sound in the otherwise silent forest. She hesitated for just a moment, feeling a faint tug of uncertainty in her heart. But the light and the warmth within the cabin called to her. She needed help, and this was the only lead she had. With a steadying breath, Gerda pushed open the door and stepped inside. The warmth was immediate, a gentle heat that enveloped her, melting away the chill of the outside world. The cabin was small but cozy, with a stone hearth crackling with fire, casting a warm glow on the wooden walls. The air inside smelled faintly of pine and herbs, with a comforting, earthy fragrance that reminded her of home. At the center of the room, sitting by the fire, was an elderly woman, her long silver hair braided and wrapped in a warm shawl. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a kind, knowing light, and her smile, though faint, was welcoming. "Ah, I've been waiting for you," the woman said in a soft voice, her words almost blending with the humming melody. "I knew you would come. You've been seeking answers, seeking a way to find him." Gerda stood still for a moment, blinking in surprise. "You know about Kay?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. The woman nodded, her smile widening. "I do. The Snow Queen's hold over him is strong, but not unbreakable. You have come a long way, child. The journey has been difficult, but you are closer than you know. The love in your heart for him has already begun to melt the ice around him. But there is still work to be done." Gerda's heart raced. She hadn't Expected this, hadn't known what to expect, but hearing the woman speak so confidently, with such calm assurance, filled her with a renewed sense of hope. But I don't know how to help him, Gerda confessed, her voice faltering. I don't know what to do next. The woman's gaze softened, and she beckoned Gerda to sit beside her by the fire. The journey you've undertaken, dear child, has already brought you further than most could ever go. You have the strength within you, the love, to break the Snow Queen's spell. But you must be willing to trust in your heart. It will guide you. Gerda took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the fire seep into her bones. She felt comforted, yet a part of her still trembled with uncertainty. The road ahead was long, and the dangers of the Snow Queen's magic were ever present. But for the first time since she had begun her journey, Gerda felt as though she was not alone. The woman beside her had an ancient wisdom, a knowledge of the world that made her feel safe, as though the path she walked was not one of isolation, but one that was shared by those who had walked it before. You must cross the icy lakes, the woman continued, her voice steady, and you must find the mirror that the Snow Queen holds. The mirror reflects not just images, but the soul itself. It will show you what is hidden deep within, what cannot be seen by the eye. Only then will you be able to reach Kay and free him from the cold grip of the Snow Queen's magic. Gerda nodded, absorbing the woman's words. The journey ahead was clear now. She would have to face the magic of the Snow Queen head on, and she would need to use her heart, her love for Kay, to guide her through the darkness that lay ahead. She could do this. She had to. Thank you, Gerda whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. I don't know what I would have done without you. The woman's smile was kind, almost maternal. You have everything you need, child. Just remember, love is the greatest force in this world, more powerful than any spell. Trust in it, and it will carry you through. With those words, the woman stood, guiding Gerda to the door of the cabin. As Gerda stepped outside, the air felt different, lighter somehow, as though the burden she had been carrying was no longer hers to bear alone. She was not alone. She had the love of her heart, the warmth of the fire in her chest, and the guidance of the wise woman. She would continue her journey. She would find Kay, no matter what it took. The snow, which had once seemed so cold and isolating, now felt like a path waiting to be traveled. Gerda stepped forward, her heart stronger than ever, the light of hope guiding her every step. The path ahead seemed long and unrelenting, but Gerda's heart was no longer weighed down by doubt. The woman's words echoed in her mind. Love is the greatest force in this world. Gerda could feel the truth of them in the very depths of her soul. The wind, cold and biting against her face, no longer felt as harsh as it once had. Each gust seemed to whisper encouragement, pushing her forward, urging her onward into the unknown. The clearing had opened into a vast expanse of snow and ice, the horizon stretching out like a frozen ocean. The once familiar world of the forest had faded behind her, replaced by a stark, crystalline landscape where the sun, though present, seemed far away. The icy breath of the Snow Queen was all around her now, and Gerda could feel it as if it were a living thing. The air shimmered with the cold, and she knew that beyond this frozen wasteland lay the Queen's palace, where Kay, locked in his icy prison, awaited rescue. She could almost feel his presence, distant but real, like the echo of a song she had once known. The snow underfoot crunched with each step she took, the frozen ground smooth and slick beneath her boots. It was treacherous ground, but Gerda walked carefully, her movements deliberate, cautious. The ice was deceptively smooth, hiding the dangers beneath it cracks that could give way at any moment. But Gerda's resolve was unshakable. She thought of Kay, trapped in the icy grip of the Snow Queen spell, and with every step, her purpose grew clearer. She would save him. She would not fail him. As she ventured deeper into the frozen expanse, the temperature seemed to drop even further. Her breath formed clouds of mist in the air, and her cheeks tingled with the bite of the cold. Her hands, now numb, ached from the chill, but Gerda refused to stop. The darkness began to settle in, the long shadows of the ice stretching out before her. The wind picked up, howling through the empty landscape like a wail of despair. But Gerda held her head high, trusting in the warmth that still burned within her heart. Ahead, she saw it, the ice lake, the vast expanse of frozen water that she must cross to reach the Queen's domain. The ice stretched as far as the eye could see, its surface smooth and unbroken, glistening in the pale light of the day. The lake appeared to be a vast mirror, reflecting the harsh beauty of the world around her. But Gerda knew that beneath its perfect surface, danger lurked. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before she stepped onto the lake's surface. The ice creaked beneath her feet, but it held, steady and firm. Her heart beat faster, but her steps remained sure. Each movement was careful, measured. The vastness of the lake seemed to swallow the sound of her steps, and for a moment it felt as though she were walking on air, suspended in the stillness of the frozen world. Every step, the temperature seemed to drop even further. Gerda pulled her cloak tighter around her, her breath shallow against the biting cold. She felt the weight of the lake beneath her, as if it were alive, breathing with the world, testing her resolve. The further she walked, the colder it became, and the harder it was to ignore the creeping dread that tugged at her heart. Asterisk suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air. Gerda froze in her tracks, her eyes wide with fear. The ice had shifted, just slightly, but enough to make her pause. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the surface around her. She took a cautious step forward, but the ice creaked again, the sound louder this time, echoing through the empty, frozen world. Her heart raced. She knew she could not turn back. She had come too far. She took another step, more carefully this time, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. The crackling sound of the ice continued, like the whisper of a warning, but Gerda pressed on. The air grew colder still, and the wind howled louder, but she could hear nothing but the beating of her own heart, the steady rhythm of her determination. It felt as though time had slowed, the world around her holding its breath, waiting. Every step Gerda took on the ice was a battle against fear, a battle against the overwhelming cold. But she felt something stronger inside her, the strength of her love for Kay, the fire of her will to free him from the Snow Queen's grasp. The ice beneath her shifted once again, but this time it was different. Instead of the crack of danger, she felt the faintest tremor beneath her feet, like a pulse of life moving through the ice. Asterisk, a gust of wind swept through the lake, sending a flurry of snow swirling around her. But in that moment, Gerda felt a sense of clarity. The cold could not take her heart. The wind could not silence her purpose. She had crossed into the heart of the Snow Queen's world, and nothing, not the ice, not the winds, not the cold could stop her from reaching Kay. The journey was far from over, but she knew that with every step she was getting closer. She could feel it, a shift in the very air around her. She was not alone. The warmth of her love for Kay was stronger than any ice that sought to divide them. As Gerda finally crossed the frozen expanse of the ice lake, her body was exhausted, every step a battle against the biting cold, but her resolve was unwavering. The snow and ice around her seemed to stretch infinitely, a world where the sun's warmth had never dared to linger. As the last of the icy waters beneath the surface melted away, she found herself standing at the edge of a vast and eerie sight. Snow Queen's palace. It rose before her like a crystalline fortress, gleaming in the pale light of the evening. The walls of the palace shimmered, made entirely of ice, each piece seeming to reflect a frozen reflection of the world beyond. The palace sparkled like 1,000 diamonds, but there was an eerie stillness to it, a quiet beauty that concealed a deadly power. The snowflakes that drifted in the air seemed to freeze mid-flight before vanishing into the ice. Gerda's heart raced. She had made it. She had crossed the treacherous lake, braved the wind, the cold, and the terrifying darkness of the Snow Queen's realm. But now, standing before the palace, she felt a deep unease settle within her. She had no idea what awaited her inside, no idea what challenges she would face in order to rescue Kay from the Snow Queen's grasp, but she couldn't turn back now. She was closer than ever to him, and she would do whatever it took to save him. The wind howled louder as Gerda stepped closer to the palace, the sharpness of the cold making her cheeks burn. The snowflakes swirled around her, biting at her skin, but she continued forward, her feet crunching in the snow, each step heavy with purpose. As she neared the massive, icy gates of the palace, she could feel the weight of the magic that surrounded it, thick and oppressive, as if the air itself was frozen. Each breath a struggle against the frost. At the entrance to the palace stood 2 massive doors, carved intricately with patterns of snowflakes and frost, their surfaces smooth and gleaming. But there were no guards, no sentries to block her path. The palace, silent as the grave, seemed to welcome her, or perhaps it was merely indifferent. But Gerda did not hesitate. She reached for the door, her gloved hands trembling from both the cold and the anticipation of what lay beyond. She pushed with all her strength, the ice creaking beneath her touch, and the massive doors slowly swung open. Inside, the palace was even more magnificent than she had imagined. The walls were made entirely of ice, reflecting the light in 1,000 different directions, creating an ethereal glow that bathed the space in an otherworldly light. The floors, covered in smooth, gleaming ice, stretched far ahead, leading to a grand throne room at the center. And there, seated upon an ice throne, was the Snow Queen herself. Her appearance was as striking as it was terrifying. The Queen's beauty was undeniable, but it was a beauty that seemed cold and distant, her eyes pale and unblinking, her skin as white as the snow that surrounded them. Her long silver hair cascaded like a frozen waterfall down her back, her gown a shimmering robe of ice that reflected the world around her, distorting the light. She looked like a queen, but she was no longer human in any true sense. Her presence was powerful, but there was no warmth to it, no compassion. She was the embodiment of winter's harshest bite. Gerda stood at the entrance, frozen in awe and fear. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt the weight of the Snow Queen's gaze. There was no kindness in her eyes, no hint of mercy. The Snow Queen's beauty was intoxicating, but Gerda could feel the chill in her presence, a coldness that seeped deep into her bones. "You've come," the Snow Queen said, her voice like the soft crunch of snow beneath heavy boots. "I've been waiting for you, little girl. I know why you've come, and I know that you believe your love will save him." She smiled, but the smile was empty, a mere curve of cold lips. "But you have not yet learned what love truly means." Gerda's legs shook as she stepped forward, but her voice, though trembling, remained strong. "I will save Kay. I will bring him back, no matter what you do." The Snow Queen's eyes flickered with a cold amusement, but her expression remained unchanged. She raised a slender hand, and with a single motion, the room seemed to grow even colder. "Your love is a sweet thing, little girl," she said softly, "but it is no match for the frozen heart that I have created." She gestured toward the far end of the palace, where a frozen glass coffin stood. Within it lay Kay, his pale face frozen in an expression of quiet sorrow, his body still and lifeless, yet his eyes were open, as if staring into eternity. "He belongs to me now. You cannot take him from me, not while the ice holds him." Gerda's breath caught in her throat as she gazed upon Kay's frozen form. He was just as she remembered, yet so different, trapped in the ice, unable to move or speak. She could feel the tears welling in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly, unwilling to let the Snow Queen see her weakness. She had come too far to falter now. The Snow Queen's laughter echoed through the icy chamber, a sound like the crackling of frozen branches snapping in the wind. "You think your love will melt this ice? You think your heart is stronger than the magic I have woven? Come, then, prove it." Gerda stepped forward, her resolve hardening. The journey had led her here, to this frozen palace, to this moment. She would not leave without Kay. The ice might be cold, but she knew the warmth of her love could melt it. She would do whatever it took, no matter the challenge, no matter the danger. The air inside the Snow Queen's palace was thick with magic, cold and suffocating, yet Gerda stood firm in the midst of it, her heart a blaze of warmth that defied the frigid landscape surrounding her. The Queen's chilling words echoed in her ears, but they didn't have the same power over her as they once might have. Gerda had come this far on the strength of her love for Kay. Nothing, not even the icy grip of the Queen's magic, could extinguish that dot. With each step she took toward Kay's frozen form, Gerda felt a sense of both urgency and resolve. The Snow Queen's laughter reverberated through the icy walls, a haunting sound, but Gerda pressed on, her eyes never leaving Kay, who lay motionless in his frozen glass coffin. His expression was peaceful, almost serene, but his eyes, their lifeless gaze, tore at Gerda's heart. The sight of him like this, trapped, frozen, lost, was more than she could bear, yet she knew she had no choice. She had to fight for him, to fight for the love they shared. She had to believe, even in this impossible place, that the warmth of her heart could melt the cold. I will save him, Gerda whispered to herself, her voice trembling but strong. The Snow Queen's cruel smile twisted as she watched Gerda approach, her gaze cold and calculating. The ice in the air seemed to thicken, the very atmosphere bending to the Queen's will. But Gerda's love for Kay burned brighter with every passing moment. She could feel it within her, an energy building, an undeniable force that defied the Queen's magic. Asterisk. You are brave, little girl, the Snow Queen said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. But bravery alone will not help you now. Love. What is love to the coldness of the world I have created? You believe your love can melt the ice, but all you will do is break yourself upon it. Gerda paused before the glass coffin, gazing down at Kay's frozen form. His face, pale and lifeless, seemed so far from the boy she had once known. His laughter, his warmth, his spark of life, all hidden beneath layers of ice. Yet deep in her heart, she knew that he was still there. He was still Kay, her friend, her companion, the one she had shared so many adventures with, the one who had once been as full of life as she had been. Her heart ached at the thought of him, but it also filled her with a deep, unwavering strength. She knelt before the coffin, her fingers gently brushing the cold glass. Her hands shook, but her touch was tender, as if reaching for a lost connection. The warmth in her chest seemed to grow, pulsing with the rhythm of her heart. She wasn't sure how it would happen, how her love could melt the ice, but she had no doubt that it would. She had felt the power of her love when it had carried her this far, through the storm and the cold, through the heartache and the despair. She had felt it when the wind howled against her and when the Snow Queen's servant tried to take her. The love she held for Kay was the most powerful thing she had, and it would not fail her now. Please, Gerda whispered, her voice cracking. Please, Kay, come back. I need you. I love you. Her voice, full of sincerity and heartache, seemed to vibrate through the frozen air. For a moment, the palace fell silent. The air was still. The wind ceased its howling. The Snow Queen's laughter, which had been so strong and filled with icy disdain, faded into nothing. It was as though the entire world paused in that single moment, holding its breath, watching. Then, a small crack appeared in the ice dot at first. Gerda thought she had imagined it, but as she looked closer, the crack widened, slowly, carefully, spreading across the surface of the glass coffin like a spider's web. Her heart raced. She reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it against the glass. It was warm now, warmer than it had been, and for the first time since she had entered the palace, the cold did not bite at her skin. It was as if the ice itself was melting beneath her touch, not just physically, but emotionally, as if the barriers that had surrounded them both were being undone. The Snow Queen's expression faltered, her lips parting in disbelief. She had not expected this. She had not expected Gerda's love to be so powerful. But Gerda didn't stop. She pressed her hands to the glass, feeling the heat of her love flow through her fingertips, wrapping around Kay, pulling him from the icy prison. She didn't care how long it took. She would not leave without him. And then, with a soft, almost imperceptible sound, the ice cracked completely. The glass shattered, falling to the ground in slow, delicate fragments, and Gerda's heart surged with joy as she saw Kay's eyes flutter open. He gasped, a shudder running through him as the warmth of life returned to his body. His skin, once cold and pale, was now warm to the touch, and his chest rose and fell with each breath, full of life. The transformation was slow at first, but with each passing second, Gerda could see the color returning to his cheeks, the light in his eyes flickering once more. She fell to her knees beside him, her arms wrapping around him as he slowly sat up, his body stiff from the ice, but his mind slowly returning to the world. "Kay," she breathed, her voice full of disbelief and joy. "Kay, you're back." The boy blinked at her, confusion clouding his face at first, but then a slow recognition began to spread across his features. "Gerda, is it really you?" he whispered, his voice weak but steady. With a joyful laugh, Gerda nodded. "It's me, Kay. I found you. We're going home." And in that moment, the world seemed to come alive again. The ice around them began to melt, the coldness receding as the warmth of their reunion filled the palace. The Snow Queen, seeing the power of their bond, watched in silence, her icy heart beginning to crack in the face of such unwavering love. But it was too late. The spell was broken. Gerda had saved Kay, and the cold reign of the Snow Queen was finally over. With Kay free from the icy spell of the Snow Queen, the two of them stood together in the soft, melting snow of the palace. The once frigid air around them had shifted, no longer cold and unyielding, but warm, filled with the promise of new beginnings. The Snow Queen, who had stood so strong in her power, now seemed distant, a shadow of her former self, as though her magic could not compete with the warmth that had returned to the world. Her palace, once so perfect and glittering with cold beauty, now seemed less magnificent, its ice melting, its walls crumbling beneath the gentle pressure of the world's renewal. Kay, still a little disoriented, looked around in awe, his eyes wide as he slowly regained his senses. The once pristine, frozen palace had transformed before his very eyes into something less terrifying, less cold. It was as though the warmth of Gerda's love had turned the entire world around them into a place of possibility. He turned to her, his face softening with recognition and wonder. "Gerda." Kay's voice was full of amazement, his words laced with the tenderness he had lost while under the Snow Queen's spell. He reached for her hand, and their fingers intertwined in a moment of profound connection. "I thought I had lost you forever," Gerda said, her voice trembling with emotion as she looked into his eyes. "I never stopped believing. I knew I would find you." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of the entire journey. The long, cold months of searching, the dangers, the cold, the love they shared was a force that had transcended it all. Gerda had fought through the freezing winds and icy landscapes, braving the unknown because she knew, deep down, that her love for Kay was enough to melt even the hardest of hearts. Kay squeezed her hand gently, a sense of relief and warmth flooding his being as he stood beside her. "I don't understand what happened," he whispered, his voice still faint from the cold spell, but there was a new clarity in it. "It feels like I was trapped, lost in the cold, and now everything feels alive again." Gerda smiled, tears welling up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "You were trapped, Kay," she said softly, her voice steady and calm, "but you're free now." "We're free." Together they turned and began to walk out of the once icy palace. The floor beneath them, once cold and slippery with frost, was now solid and warm. The cold wind had softened to a breeze, and the snowflakes that still fell from the sky felt like gentle, comforting kisses. It was as if the entire world around them had shifted back into its natural rhythm, no longer gripped by the queen's frost, but instead embraced by the warmth of the changing seasons. The path leading out of the Snow Queen's realm was now clear, the once treacherous ice now melting into a path of soft earth and clear streams. It was as if nature itself had welcomed them back into its fold. Gerda and Kay walked side by side, the forest stretching out before them, welcoming them back as if nothing had ever happened. The forest, too, had been caught in the queen's icy spell, but now the trees swayed in the breeze, their branches beginning to show signs of life once again. The distant sun, once hidden by the cold mist, now peeked through the clouds, casting a soft golden light over the world. As they walked, Gerda couldn't help but glance at Kay, her heart swelling with happiness. His presence was all she had ever needed, and now, walking beside him, she felt as though nothing in the world could ever take away the joy she felt. The darkness of the past months seemed to melt away with every step, as though the very earth beneath them had forgiven the long winter. "Where do we go now?" Kay asked, his voice soft but hopeful. Gerda smiled, her heart light with the knowledge that the worst was behind them. "We go home," she said, "back to the warmth, back to where love can thrive. We return to where we belong." The two of them walked, hand in hand, the world around them slowly returning to life. The birds began to sing again, their songs filling the air with melodies of renewal. The flowers, which had been buried beneath the snow, began to push through. The earth, their buds opening to the sunlight once more. The earth itself seemed to be coming back to life, just as Kay had. Just as Gerda had never stopped believing he would dot as Gerda and Kay continued their journey back through the now thawing landscape, the world around them seemed to stretch toward a new beginning. The once silent forest hummed with life as the last remnants of winter's grip melted away under the warmth of the sun. The snow had receded, leaving soft patches of earth, and tiny green shoots began to break through the soil as if nature itself was rejoicing in the reunion of the two friends. Gerda could hardly believe how far they had come, how much they had endured, and now, walking beside Kay, it felt as though they were stepping into a new chapter of their lives. She looked at him, his face flushed from the cold and his eyes sparkling with the warmth of the sun eyes that had once been cold and distant, now filled with life and recognition. The transformation was nothing short of a miracle. She had never stopped believing, never let go of the hope that their love could bring him back. And now, standing by his side, she could feel the deep satisfaction that comes from having fought for what was truly precious. K. too felt the change within him. He had been lost to the cold for so long, trapped by the Snow Queen's magic, but now, walking beside Gerda, the world felt vivid once more. The warmth of her presence, the safety of her love, was a balm to the frigid emptiness that had once consumed him. It was as though he had been reborn, not just physically, but in every way. He could feel the lightness returning to his soul, the joy of simply being alive, and the gratitude for the one who had never given up on him. The path that led them home felt different now, as though the landscape itself had changed to reflect their journey. The sky, which had been a dull gray for so long, was now a clear blue, and the air, once sharp and biting, was now warm and inviting. The trees, stripped bare of their leaves just weeks ago, were now beginning to sprout new buds, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The earth beneath their feet, once hard and cold, was now soft and fertile, teeming with the promise of life. As they walked, they began to notice the familiar sights of the village up ahead. The tiny houses, their rooftops still dusted with remnants of snow, seemed to come alive with the warmth of home. Gerda's heart swelled as she saw the little details that she had once taken for granted, the smoke curling from chimneys, the faint chatter of villagers in the distance, the familiar stone walls of their cottage. She could almost hear the laughter of her family waiting for her return. She quickened her pace, the anticipation of seeing them again filling her with joy. But before they reached the village, Kay stopped and looked at Gerda, his expression thoughtful. "Gerda," he began, his voice quiet but filled with emotion. I don't remember much of what happened while I was under the Snow Queen spell. It's all a blur, like a dream I can't quite grasp." He paused, his brow furrowing slightly as if trying to recall the lost memories. "But I remember you. I remember your voice, your warmth, your love. That's what kept me going. That's what brought me back." Gerda smiled, her heart swelling with tenderness. She reached out and took Kay's hand, her fingers gently brushing against his. "You don't need to remember everything, Kay," she said softly. "All that matters is that you're here now, and we're together again. The rest will come in time." Kay nodded, a slow smile forming on his lips as he squeezed her hand. I'm glad to be here. With you. They continued walking, the village drawing nearer with each step. As they approached the first familiar house, the sound of children's laughter reached their ears. Gerda's heart lifted at the sound, and she knew, without a doubt, that the life they were returning to would be one filled with warmth, love, and the beauty of shared moments. When they finally entered the village, the scene before them was as peaceful as it had always been. The streets, lined with snow-dusted houses, were filled with the gentle chatter of neighbors and the laughter of children playing. The air was alive with the sense of home-cooked meals, the warmth of hearth fires, and the promise of reunion. Gerda's family was there, waiting for her at the edge of the village, their faces lighting up in surprise and joy when they saw her. Return, Kay standing beside her. Her mother rushed forward, her arms open wide, and Gerda was swept into a tight embrace. The familiar warmth of her mother's arms made Gerda feel as though she had never left, as though the entire journey had been a distant memory. Now fading into the background, Kay stood quietly by Gerda's side, still feeling a bit unsure of his place in this warm, familiar world. But as Gerda's mother pulled him into a warm embrace, his heart softened, and the feeling of safety that Gerda had given him began to settle within him too. The village, his home, was where his journey had begun, and it was here, with Gerda, that he had found his way back. Together, Gerda and Kay had conquered the cold, defeated the icy magic of the Snow Queen, and returned to a world filled with warmth, love, and the quiet joy of belonging. And though the journey had been long, and though they had faced darkness and despair, they now stood side by side, ready to begin again. The past was behind them, and the future was filled with endless possibilities as the warmth of the village enveloped them. Gerda and Kay found themselves standing at the threshold of their home, the place where love and warmth had once always awaited them. The air was sweet, carrying the familiar smell of pinewood fires and freshly baked bread, a fragrance that instantly reminded Gerda of simpler times. The house, though small, felt vast to her now, filled with the echoes of memories both old and new. The laughter of children in the street, the sound of neighbors gossiping as they went about their daily routines, all of it was like music to her ears. It felt like a world she could now return to fully, without the weight of worry and fear. Gerda's mother, her face flushed with tears of joy, led the way into the cottage, her arms still wrapped tightly around Gerda, as if afraid to let her go. My sweet, brave girl, her mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I knew you would come back. I knew it. And now you're here. She pressed Gerda's face against her chest, her hand stroking Gerda's hair with such tenderness, as if trying to erase every trace of the time they had spent apart. Kay, standing a little to the side, felt a gentle tug in his chest. He had always known Gerda's family, but this reunion, this embrace of love and warmth, was foreign to him. He had spent so many years in the frozen grip of the Snow Queen's magic, lost to a cold world where feelings like these had no place. Now, standing in this home, the warmth of Gerda's mother's embrace and the affection in her eyes, he felt as though he were waking from a long, dark sleep. Everything felt different now, but it also felt right. Gerda, still in her mother's arms, glanced at Kay with a soft smile. "This is home, Kay," she said, her voice low and filled with affection. "This is where we belong, together." Kay nodded, his heart swelling with emotion. He was still finding his way back to this world, this warmth, but he could already sense that everything had changed. He was no longer trapped in the icy realm of the Snow Queen's palace. He was no longer the boy frozen in time, staring into the cold abyss of magic. He was here now with Gerda, with the people who loved him, in a place where he could finally begin again. Dot, as they sat together at the hearth, the fire crackling in the background, Gerda's mother prepared a warm meal, filling the house with the comforting smells of stew and fresh bread. The room felt full of life, full of love. Gerda and Kay sat across from one another at the wooden table, their hands intertwined. The firelight flickered across their faces, casting gentle shadows that seemed to dance in time with the warmth that enveloped them. Asterisk. There was something deeply comforting about the simplicity of it all. The crackle of the fire, the hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware as Gerda and her mother worked together to prepare the meal. The world, once so cold and distant, now felt infinitely more connected, more alive. It was as though, after everything they had been through, they had finally found their way back to the most fundamental truths of life: love, family, and the beauty of being home. As the meal was served, Gerda looked at Kay with a knowing smile. "We've come so far," she said softly, her eyes shining with both gratitude and a quiet pride. "You're here now, and nothing will ever take that away from us." Kay smiled back, the warmth of her words settling deeply in his heart. "I feel like I've just woken up from a long, terrible dream," he admitted. "I don't remember much, but I know one thing. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Gerda, you've always been the light that guided me out of the darkness." The room fell into a comfortable silence as the fire crackled, their hands still intertwined. Gerda and Kay knew that the journey ahead was still unknown, but for the first time, they didn't feel as though they were walking it alone. Together, they had faced the unimaginable, and now they could finally rest, their hearts filled with the peace that only home could bring. The journey to this moment had been long and filled with hardship, but it had also been a journey of growth, both. Gerda and Kay had learned the power of love, the importance of resilience, and the strength of hope. And as they sat there, surrounded by the warmth of family, by the glow of the fire, and by the love that had brought them back together, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it hand in hand. Their love would be their guide, and no cold or darkness could ever take that from them again. As the days passed in the warmth of home, Gerda and Kay began to settle into a life that was simple, yet profoundly fulfilling. The once haunting memories of the Snow Queen's cool grasp began to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of daily life. They worked together in the garden, tending to the small plots of flowers that bloomed with vibrant colors, a far cry from the frozen world they had left behind. Kay, whose heart had once been frozen by the queen's magic, now reveled in the warmth of the sun, the joy of simple tasks, and the comfort of being surrounded by those who loved him. Every day felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. Gerda, with her unyielding optimism, reminded him that the greatest gift they had was the love they shared. It was that love that had carried them both through the coldest trials, and now it was the warmth that enveloped them, that healed the wounds left by the Queen's reign. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun filled the room, Gerda and Kay sat together at the small wooden table by the window, their hands intertwined. Outside, the last remnants of winter's frost melted away, giving way to the delicate buds of spring. The forest, once silent and cold, was now alive with the sounds of birds singing in the trees, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the soft murmur of a stream trickling nearby. The world had come back to life, just as they had. Kay, who had grown quieter over the past few days, finally spoke, his voice soft but filled with a deep gratitude. "Gerda," he began, "I've been thinking about everything that happened, everything you did for me. I don't know how to thank you. You never gave up on me, even when I was lost, even when I couldn't remember who I was. You brought me back, and for that I will always be grateful." Gerda smiled gently, squeezing his hand. "You don't need to thank me, Kay," she said softly. "I didn't do it alone. Our love, your strength, it was always there. Even when you couldn't see it, all I did was hold on to what I knew was true. I knew that you were still there, and that love would find its way through." Kay's eyes shone with emotion as he looked at her, his heart swelling with affection. He had always known Gerda was special, but now, after everything they had been through, he understood just how powerful love could be. It was not just a feeling, but a force that could transcend the deepest darkness, the coldest winter. Their bond was something that no magic, no spell could ever break. It was something eternal that the two of them sat in silence for a while, watching the last rays of sunlight fade into the horizon. The stars began to twinkle softly in the evening sky, a quiet reminder of the vastness of the world and the tiny space they occupied within it. The night was peaceful, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Gerda and Kay were at peace with each other, with themselves, and with the world. And so, with the love they had shared and the bond they had forged, they moved forward, side by side, into the future. There would always be challenges ahead, always more to face, but they have learned that together they could overcome anything. The trials of the Snow Queen were a distant memory now, a story they would tell someday to remind themselves and others of the power of love, of resilience, and of hope. As the fire in the hearth crackled softly and the village settled into the quiet of the night, Gerda and Kay leaned back in their chairs, their hearts full, their spirits at rest. The world outside was a place of infinite possibility, and within the warmth of their home, they knew that they had everything they needed to face it together. The Snow Queen's cold reign was over. Winter had passed, and spring was here, filling There lives with the warmth of a love that would last through all seasons, through all time.